Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is Marshall Greenstein, who's been on a few other times. And we are going to, well, he is a mental health counselor and a family counselor. And today we are going to talk about self-esteem. So, anyways, I'm not sure where to start because we omitted something that I was going to talk about first. But anyways, now, what is the description of self-esteem, would you say?
Well, I think if you look at the literature, and there's plenty of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a host of different kinds of definitions.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most simplistic way I could ever say is, how individuals think or feel or experience themselves in this world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, recently, I know that we're not wearing masks, but that is because, for one thing, we're sitting a pretty good distance from each other, and the viewing audience would not be able to hear what we were saying, probably, if we were wearing them. Now, most people are going along with wearing them, okay, going along with precautions. But there are a certain percentage of people who refuse to wear them. Is this a self-esteem situation by any chance?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure it out in my own head, but...
Well, I'm not sure if it's a self-esteem issue, but I think many of the people who don't wear masks or refuse to wear masks, I think one of the common themes they express is taking away their First Amendment rights of free speech, of liberty especially, and they have a freedom of choice to be able to do what they want to do. And if they believe in their thinking, how they feel about wearing a mask, it's taken away their liberty, then they're not going to wear it, and that's it. And it's hard pressed to for them to change their minds.
Well, at least most people are going along with wearing them. So,
yes.
So that's a good thing. Now, bullying has a lot to do with self-esteem, doesn't it?
Well, it can affect self-esteem.
It affects self-esteem. Now, I've read somewhere articles written by psychologists where they say that like teenagers or young people tend to because they're struggling with self-esteem themselves, they bully other people as a way to make themselves feel better about themselves.
Okay. Well, we have examples of that, especially with seeing like kids in parks or in classrooms or outside when they're able to go out and play, and where if you identify a bully, sometimes that person appears to be loud or strong physically or in some way, but it has been a big problem. It's been identified finally. A lot has been written in the new and upcoming literature on it. And I think more and more people are taking notice of it and trying to do something about it. Because it's causing greater problems, including not just self-esteem, but some kids are hurting themselves, or some people, in the worst possible expression of response, are taking their life.
Yeah, that I've heard of that. Now, there was this girl, and I brought it up the first time I interviewed you, and I was, just asking you generalized questions about the type of work you do. And I remember people talking with me about it later, people who'd actually seen us on television. And I was talking about the girl who, in first grade, I had a boyfriend that was in third grade. And when this girl found out that was in my first grade class, found out that I had this third grade boyfriend, all of a sudden, she made my life miserable, until she quit school when she was 16 years old. And, but there was even one time where she actually threatened me with physical harm one time even.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, she said that I think we might have been in second or third grade. And I remember her saying, "My mother's coming to pick me up after school tomorrow." It was going to be the last day before Thanksgiving vacation, I think.
Okay.
And she actually said to me, "My mother's going to come to pick me up when we get finished with school tomorrow, and we're going to take you home to our house and put you in a trap." Can you imagine that? I mean, saying things.
You remember that. Do you remember what it was like at that moment to hear that?
It was terrifying. I didn't know. You have no way of knowing.
Yeah,
Here
that's
you
right.
are, a little girl, and you have no way of knowing whether the person's telling the truth or not. And as far as you know, they could be. And you're scared. All of a sudden, you're terrified, and you have trouble sleeping that night. You're afraid to go back to school the next day. It just was very, very unpleasant and terrifying.
Do you remember what happened? Just to finish that story for yourself. Did it?
No, her mother didn't come. And
Her mother didn't pick her up.
They didn't kidnap me or anything.
Did you
no.
say anything to your mother?
I don't. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I don't remember. I suppose you could pretend to be sick the next day or something.
But isn't it interesting that
That
after all these years you remember?
Somebody that young. I mean, to begin with, I think the whole thing started because I had a boyfriend. Now, how a girl that young would know that meant that maybe I had more going for me than she did or something. She must have been thinking things that up to that point in my life, I had never, it was the first, first grade was the first time in my entire life that I ever had the experience of somebody being not nice to me, and so it was, it was, but anyway, I mean, she was always trying to stir up trouble and turning people against me and everything, so.
And all the way till she was 16?
And quit school, yeah.
Yeah.
I was telling Kara Seekings about this one time when she was here. Not on the TV program, but we were talking about it. I was telling her about it afterwards. And that person died young of cancer, like maybe age 30 or something like that. And I was telling Kara about it, and then I said, that she'd gotten cancer and died young. And I said, well, what goes around comes around. And Kara goes, ×3.
Wow.
I didn't know that, but I guess it is really true. You eventually, if you mistreat people,
Well, it's energy. We don't see the energy, but it's energy just like we breathe. We don't see the air that we breathe. We take it for granted. We have to do it or we will not survive. But it's energy, and then that negative energy, for some people, may find a place physiologically in our bodies to affect us later on in an unhealthy way. And I think that's something really to look at. A lot of research is being done and has been done about that. People who are sick, and especially young, where is that coming from? Where is that coming from? So, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would wonder what her mom was really like.
I remember.
That she brought up.
I remember having met her husband, or not husband, her mother at some point in time, and she seemed like an okay person. But, I didn't know her that well, but.
Yeah. If you look
So-
back, do you think the girl, would you say she was a bully?
I would say so. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? That young, 6 years old, or 7.
Yeah, yeah. That they would already have that figured out. That
Yeah.
This girl has a boyfriend, so I've got to do something to, make sure she's not more popular than me or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking out loud, but I would think that if that was brought to the attention of an adult, your parent, or a
the
teacher, and principal, and they, I'm not sure about yesteryear, but today they may today hopefully they would take it seriously enough and bring the family in.
I don't really think the teachers and like that really did much of anything,
Well, and they may not have taken notice. For all we know, the girl was doing that to you, and yet being sweet in class and innocent and not drawing attention like that to herself. I would wonder, in doing any kind of family work, where did she learn that from? I'm not sure. I don't think kids kind of get that unless they find it somewhere.
It must be she observed something at sometime
Yeah.
at a very early age. She must have observed something.
Somebody sent messages out, and she picked up on that and ran with it. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, I probably shouldn't be talking about this on TV, but my first husband, that was only my husband for just a few years. I remember when we were first dating, I think that he wanted me to think that if I didn't marry him, that I'd never have a chance with anybody. He would, when we were dating and engaged and like that, he would say, well, I ran into so-and-so, that knows who you are, and I mentioned to him that I was going to get married to you, and he said that he felt sorry for me. And this went on several times before that he ran into certain people that said they felt sorry for him. There were all these red flags that were coming up all the time, But anyways, that's probably enough of the details of that. I could probably fill you in later. But anyways, things like that,
Okay.
And even, like even after we were married, I remember one time applying for a job, and well, I didn't get the job. I didn't get hired. And after that, he goes, well, you might as well face it. You're never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't need to be hearing that about themselves.
No.
From somebody who claims that they love them, you know what I mean?
My thoughts exactly.
Yeah. It's like, I remember one time, it was an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show, back when Oprah Winfrey had a television talk show. I'm pretty sure that was one of her programs, that somehow they had gotten this family to agree. The husband had been very verbally abusive towards his wife, and they somehow got the family to agree to be videotaped, with their interactions, their private interactions at home. And the husband just went on yelling and yelling and yelling at his wife for a prolonged period of time, telling her how horrible she was. And she's sitting there just with her head hanging, obviously feeling very depressed. And he went on and on and on. And then when they had this married couple on the program, and they're showing this video, And Oprah said to him something about, did you know that's how you sound when you're speaking to your wife? And it's like he's talking like, I didn't realize that I sounded that bad.
Oh.
You know, so I'm not sure what was going on there, but
Yeah.
I do think that people's significant others can do things to make them, you know, boyfriends, husbands, whatever, you know, that they can make the person have problems with self-esteem and so forth, or just feel depressed at least because they're in such a difficult situation.
Yeah.
So, you look like you don't know what to say.
Well, I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering, what would prompt somebody to want to be videotaped
Yeah, I don't know.
in a situation like that?
I don't know. I don't know if the husband knew.
Do you think it changed his him in any way? How he viewed himself? You said in terms of how he spoke to his wife and.
I'm not sure what became of it or anything, but I do remember seeing that, and it was pretty hideous.
Oh gee.
So,
I never saw her show.
no, I didn't see it on a regular basis, but
Yeah.
once in a while I would see it. So,
Okay.
usually when I was would be at somebody else's house and they would have their TV turned on, you know, I would notice things. So, and there are other circumstances of a person's life that can contribute to feelings of low self-esteem. Would you want to mention to us what some of these things would be?
Circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, I think of course, family. You call it family of origin. Your parents or whoever may raise you, guardians, foster parents, adopted parents. The messages they say verbally, sometimes non-verbally, body language may be picked up, and people absorb that. I think they integrate those messages, and sometimes it plays out in hopefully healthy, beautiful, wonderful ways, loving ways, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it plays out to foster a bad feeling about ourselves. And sometimes, unless someone recognizes that, or we, even especially if we can recognize that ourselves and alter that, that sometimes we just take that message and run with it. And it plays out in our lives, and with relationships, intimate relationships with good friends, family, eventually maybe with a significant other, spouse, work, friend, and those things, those things come out. We have, many situations, especially like in work, where people feel badly about themselves, the so-called disgruntled worker, but who is that person? What's happening to him or to her? And sometimes, it's a tough position to be in, but if you are a boss or supervisor, how you treat others, that also sends a message to people. You might have somebody who is competent coming to work, and being mistreated, and that could cause some, maybe situational depression, ill feelings about oneself. There's untold infinite possibilities of where people can say or read messages clearly or maybe not so clearly and think that defines who they are, and they run with that. And sometimes those messages, bring ill health.
Yeah. I know, you get some people who, you have jobs where they make lots of money, and then you've got people who have low-paying jobs. And usually those low-paying jobs are the ones that are the most difficult to do. I think maybe things like that, or you know, may affect how you feel about yourself if you haven't been able to get a really good job, or even worse, if you become a homeless person. What goes on in the minds of the homeless people?
Well, especially that we're realizing how many people out there who are homeless have mental health, substance abuse, alcohol,
Which led to
related
their being
yeah,
homeless.
yeah. And you know, the simplistic way I like to look at it is, and even how I kind of do my work with clients, is that we all have one thing in common among all the many things we have in common.
The fact that we're all going to die.
Well, but we all have a story. We all have a story, okay? And it's important for people to know here what your story is if you're at work or in a relationship. You know, people meet each other and they date. You know, we communicate. We have a story. What is your story? What is my story? We may not ask somebody in that way, but that's, you know, we bring that into relationships. And sometimes people's story is not one that we may want to hear, or maybe ugly, or maybe laden with abuse and such. And especially with people we might see who are homeless. Many of those people may have been people who had good jobs and may have come from a good family, but perhaps they lost their job. Maybe it wasn't through their own doing, and they had no support, and all that was left was to survive on the street. We never know what the story is until we get to, you know, go up to someone and say, "How are you? Let me get you shelter. Let me get you some food. Let me get you some sustenance," and then find out what is your story. You know, it may be interesting.
Yeah, there was. We were watching a DVD one night, maybe a month or so ago. It was, I had picked it up. Well, it was a set of 2 discs. I had picked it up at the Northern Chautauqua Canine Rescue's dogs yard sale in the middle of the summer at the end of July, and I saw it there, and I got it because it was Wayne Dyer. It had never even been opened and watched.
Okay.
It was brand new, and it was Wayne Dyer. You probably know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
And he's deceased now, unfortunately. Yeah, he somewhere along the line died of leukemia, but he was talking about how he had been somewhere, and there was a homeless man outside of a restaurant. I think that he not only bought him something to eat, but allowed him to order whatever he wanted and paid for it. And then it almost seemed like he helped him with some other things too, just to help the guy out a little bit. He did some other things, and maybe he took him to his hotel room and let him take a shower or something. Maybe he gave him, I don't remember all the details, maybe he gave him some fresh clothing to wear or something. But, you know, it's the kind of thing, it actually can help you feel good about your own self when you help somebody else out like that, you know.
Sure.
And he was a pretty interesting person, Wayne Dyer was.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching those discs.
Well,
So-
one other thought that I have with the homeless too is that I've had clients who were homeless.
Oh, have you?
Yes, and one of the things that one man once said to me was, that could be anybody. He says, so we're held with, you know, people judge us in harsh ways, bad ways. You know, all the worst thoughts that they have, they put together for the homeless. But he says, that could be you. That could be you. And we're seeing more and more with COVID how many people have lost their jobs, how many people have very little money to live on, who are unable to pay their rent right away, who are who may not have access to another job in the future. What are they going to do? Are they going to be homeless? Are they going to be put out on the street? More and more, I'm just reading, it was horrible, about landlords who have to pay their mortgage, obviously, but many landlords are having to give notifications, especially in cities, to people who can't pay their rent. So, that's not the end of the story, but the end of the story sounds like it's going to be pretty terrible. And what does that do for self-esteem? I doubt it does very much in the way of good, but a lot of people may be literally on the streets with family and belongings. In fact, there are stories that are talking about people coming home from maybe being out on an outing or looking for a job and coming home and seeing their belongings out on the road. On the street.
Sometimes landlords
landlords
do that.
who have
They'll come in and empty out a person's apartment.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a whole domino effect, because if the landlord doesn't get paid
then he can't
the
pay,
rent, then he can't pay his mortgage
bills.
and such.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of political, interesting pieces about that, with corporations who are becoming major landlords and banks and such. But on a more simplistic level, everybody has to pay their bills.
Right.
And not a lot of people are willing to say, well, you can hold off for a while, and when they do, at the end of that, you still have to pay. And where people are losing their jobs, well, so when you say low-paying jobs, many of the people, the 20 or 30 million people who in our country who are still out of work, had low-paying jobs. And
living from paycheck to paycheck.
Living from paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, that's right. Right. And many of those people, at some point, I think we like to freely use the word heroes, and of course, medical people, the nurses and doctors who were taking care of COVID patients in hospitals and watching death day to day, and some of them getting sick. They were called heroes, and suddenly it becomes the grocery people and then the truck drivers who are bringing things. And, so everybody's a hero. And although it sounds kind of odd to say that, we may laugh, who defines what the hero is. But the only good thing I saw out of that for myself was that it helped identify and define all of us in some way. We're equal. I don't care if you're the person who's making a lot of money and you can afford to hang out but you'll be able to pay your bills, or the person with a low-paying job who has lost his or her job, or maybe they're laid off for a while until their employer can gather him or herself together at some point financially to reopen. But everybody has a story, and who knows who might be the person on the street. We read a lot about the Great Depression in the late 20s. There were a lot of people who were on the street, and some of those people were well off, but they lost everything, and some were very poor. So I think we have to look at the human connection, and maybe not look at everybody as heroes, but perhaps, because I think a lot of heroes don't want to be looked at, classified as heroes. They're just regular people who are serving and being there for other people. We have to be, I think, human, humane about it.
Yeah. So now we're taught from a very young age to compete with each other. So we might want to talk about how that affects people's feelings of self-esteem. Now, I remember, this is another thing Kara Seekings and I were talking about just between the two of us. I had mentioned to her one day, I can't remember how the subject came up, but it was something about, I've never been a fan of competitive sports, like football and basketball and like that. I've never, maybe it's from my own personal experience, of having people bullied me or anything, but and it's not just that either. It's, beauty contests and all kinds of contests. And the thing of it is when people are competing against each other, there's always going to be a winner and somebody who's disappointed.
That's right.
Yeah. And you see this all the time when it comes to competition. There's somebody who's extremely happy and the other side that's not. Now, nobody can tell me that, people on the sports teams don't feel disappointed after a game if they weren't the team that won the game,
Oh.
And, it's like we're taught this. We're taught to compete like this.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing a girl crying one time because she wasn't chosen to be one of the cheerleaders at school.
Okay.
She tried out for it, but she wasn't chosen, and there was another teenager. I remember there was this church in Jamestown when I worked at a group home in Jamestown, and there was this church that I took resource center people, residents from one of the group homes to church there, to church services. And I remember there was a girl that was supposed to sing a song or something, I don't know, and she couldn't because she kept breaking down and crying. Turned out she'd tried to be chosen, she'd competed to be chosen as homecoming queen or something like that. And that was, by that time I was in my early 40s, and been around the block a few times. And it's like, I'm thinking, oh, is that all? At that point in my life, I was never a homecoming queen, and I'm thinking, oh, is that all? Is when I found out what was bothering her. So, just stuff like that, can make people feel so bad.
Well, with competition, I think, yeah, you're right. That certainly affects self-esteem and self-confidence. To add to that, it's a part of self-esteem. And I think it's incumbent upon, those in our lives when we're kids, the adults in our lives, to teach us how to be how to win, and do it in a humble way, do it in a caring way, and how, if we lose, that it's okay, how to be a good person with the loss and not let it affect us in a harsh way. Unfortunately, we often use the word loser as a pejorative. You're a loser, and then kids, remember years ago they put up the L sign and they say loser. They do that years ago, and even today, you're a loser. There's politicians who even use that expression, so-and-so is a loser. No one wants to be thought of as a loser because it's almost like the worst judgment of what kind of a person you are. But, and that's competition at its worst. That's worse when, or who's my team? I met a woman the other day who walked up to me. We were just visiting and saying hi, and she said, "Do you like football?" And I said, "Yeah, do you?" And we just started talking about the Buffalo Bills and such, and it was kind of a nice conversation about competition and who we liked and all of that. But then there are people every day who have those kind of conversations, even on talk radio, which is kind of odd. And they talk about it as if it's them, my team, or we are. They take that possessive. They take on the possession of this is my team, and they're losing, and how it affects their lives on Monday, and messes them up with going to work, and how they affect their family. That's why we talk about the worst of it is like when they talk about Super Bowls.
Yeah, I some fans. some fans of some teams, I mean, they actually have been known to get violent with
Oh,
each
yeah.
other.
That's right.
I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, really. It's pretty ridiculous that they earn as much money as they do, you know, for
Yeah.
basically playing a game. I
Yeah.
mean, really. The only
But it's
reason.
entertainment.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's what it is. It's part of the entertainment world. And in our world, in our culture, entertainers who are good or great, be they opera singers or concert pianists or football players or ice skaters or whomever, they get paid the most money because they can get that because people like entertainment. We like to watch movies. The best actors and actresses make a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's plenty of actors and actresses who don't make anywhere near that. So that's
Because they're not the ones that
they're
are.
not the best.
There's a lot of demand for
Yeah,
it.
and in that kind of competition, the people who are at the top make the most. You know.
Millions and millions of dollars. Although I have to say that I do believe that it's probably not easy to be an actor. You know,
no.
I mean, you have to be able to do a convincing job of projecting yourself as being somebody that you're not.
Yeah,
So
and it's a lot of work.
it is. It is.
a lot of-
It's
a lot of work.
probably.
Yeah,
It's probably a lot harder than most people imagine.
that's right.
So,
And unfortunately, not everybody wants to be an actor or a football player or a cheerleader or any of those things. But still, there's competition in jobs. Anytime, and we're going to see that. I think in our future, hopefully, it'll be a good thing, good competition. But what's going to happen to the 20 or 30 million people out of work? Hopefully, our lawmakers will be creative and create jobs, whether it's in infrastructure or such, where people can then compete for jobs, can get training, and get jobs, and make it a competition for everybody, for the best, for everyone, in the best interests of all of us, rather than 50 people applying for one job, and who is the best, and how was that person chosen?
Yeah.
That creates turmoil.
Yeah, and then there's these. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of elderly people. I'm not talking about our age group. I'm talking about ones that are more closer to being a generation older than us. And I found that they really love watching those game shows on TV. And so I've watched these. There's a couple of morning ones that I've watched with various people. And one of them is Let's Make a Deal, and another one is The Price is Right. One is on right after the other. And basically, people are competing to win material possessions, is what it amounts to. And what I'm seeing is a lot of people on these game shows aren't winning anything. And I'm thinking, a lot of people go away from these game shows disappointed.
Don't they win even consolation prizes, or is it all and nothing, black and white?
I think it. Some of them, I was even talking to somebody recently who has been a few times out to The Price is Right in California, and even the people who are chosen to come up and compete, they're not drawing names out of a hat to get people up out of the audience. They're actually thoroughly interviewing everybody that comes to the program, and they're making decisions about who is going to be called up to compete. And so there's a lot of people who don't even get to compete, and a lot of the ones who they show them these prizes. If you play this game and get it right, you'll win this car or whatever. And a lot of them these games that are difficult to do perfectly enough to win that car or whatever. It's kind of like a guessing game or something. And not only that, but it also seems to me like a lot of these programs are half-hour-long commercials for the products that are being won.
Okay.
To me, it looks like half-hour-long commercials.
Okay.
So,
But remember, a lot of the people that you're talking about, the generation older than us, I think they were the first generation of people who were actually watching game shows when they were first televised.
Oh,
So they came on. So when you said that, I was just thinking The Price is Right, and I thought, wow, that's still on. I mean, I can still remember that watching that as a kid growing up.
well, it's Drew Carey is
Yeah,
who
but
is-
they've
is
gone through a few different hosts. But
Yeah.
that game show, a few game shows have been on for a long time.
Since I was since we were little kids, yeah.
Yeah, but when you talk about the person who doesn't win, or we may call, what do we call that person? You didn't win, or we call that person the loser. And how do we say that? And how does is that person affected by not winning the grand prize, a car or something? I don't know what happens, how they deal with it. Hopefully the person doesn't walk away and get too upset by it and just shrugs it off and says, well, it was a good, fun experience. And that's what promotes, I think, good self-esteem also, to be able to walk away from any situation like that and say, thank you for the experience. It was a good experience. I feel disappointed, but I'm not going to let that ruin my life.
Yeah, I think some people try to feel better about themselves by who they have for friends. Like they try to become friends with people that they consider somebody important, and they contribute towards their feeling of self-esteem by having people they consider important be friends to them. Do you know anything about that?
Not too much. I think.
Not too much?
No, I think maybe also talking about like name dropping, like, I know so-and-so, or I went to a party when so-and-so was there, or I heard about so-and-so,
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Now, we'll spend the last 15 minutes of the program coming up with ideas for people to help find things that they can do to feel good about themselves.
Okay.
You brought a book with you.
I did. Yeah, this is a book that I've had for a while, family had. It's called The Pocket. Pema Chodron, who was a Buddhist nun, But I was looking through it one day and just happened to come up with, after we spoke about wanting to talk about self-esteem, and I like something that she says here, if I may read it. And it's entitled, "We Start With Ourselves." In cultivating loving kindness, we train first to be honest, loving, and compassionate towards ourselves. Rather than nurturing self-denigration, we begin to cultivate a clear, seeing kindness. Sometimes we feel good and strong, sometimes we feel inadequate and weak, but our loving kindness is unconditional. No matter how we feel, we can aspire to be happy. We can learn to act and think in ways that sow seeds of our future well-being, gradually becoming more aware of what causes happiness as well as what causes distress. Without loving kindness for ourselves, it is difficult, if not impossible, to genuinely feel for others. And I like to repeat that to them because I think it's important. We're not isolated people. We can't, self-esteem has much to do, everything to do with our connections to the world. Without loving kindness for ourselves, it is difficult, if not impossible, to genuinely feel it for others. And I think that speaks for maybe the girl who was bullying you. You know, gotta
Well,
wonder.
she probably felt as bad as she was making me feel.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I wonder
So-
wonder what would have happened if someone would have said to her, or you're only 6 or 7, so you have only 6 or 7 years of insight, not very much. But I wonder if someone would have been able to say to her, "Hey, honey, could you imagine being nice and going up to this little girl named Gail and saying, 'Hi, Gail, my name is,' whatever her name is, and saying, 'Want to do something together? You know, will you sit at my table for lunch?' And then you get to know each other instead of being, a bully or saying these horrible things. I wonder what her life may be like. Maybe she wouldn't have died from cancer.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh at that, but who
But,
knows what the possibilities are? I mean, I feel feel badly for her, but
yeah.
but maybe nobody. But what we don't know is what was her family or other people. What messages did she receive? To foster a good feeling.
Well, in my experience, in the long run, it did not stop me into making myself somebody that I felt good about. Eventually, thanks to people who suggested that I try yoga, and this and that and the other thing, and now I do feel good about myself.
And see,
And
that
because
says a lot.
I've accomplished things.
Yeah, and what you're saying is you've had people of strong connection, intimate people in your life, perhaps parents, friends, family members, spouses, others who have been able to say, "Hey, you're a good person," without maybe having to say it, just by implying who they are. You're a good person. You're worthy of doing anything you want to do. That's the beauty, and especially as being a woman, we heard that just recently spoken by the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris,
yeah.
who spoke quick, in part of her earliest address to the girls in the world, young girls. She says, "Here I am in this position." It's pretty incredible position of responsibility.
The first one.
Yeah, and
the
to
first
say
woman,
any of you can do this. Anybody can do that.
The first woman vice president of
That's
the
right.
United States.
That's right. And to
pretty
be able to say to
incredible.
all the girls in the world, any of you feel good. That's really her message. Feel good about yourself. Feel good about yourself.
She said something about, "I'm the first female vice president, but I won't be the last."
That's right.
Uh-huh.
That's right. And she's paving a path for every other young lady, young woman, to do whatever she wants to do, whether it's to become a vice president of the United States, or being anything, CEO of a corporation, or just feeling good about driving the truck with the groceries to the grocery store.
Right.
Anything.
Right. Well, anything, any type of thing that I've, tried as in my adult life to learn how to do, that I was interested enough anyway to learn how to do, I've generally found myself to be pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think that people just need to not let themselves be affected
Yeah.
by what other people try to tell, negative things that people try to tell them about themselves, and go ahead and work towards achieving certain goals and things.
Something I want to say before we're finished here is I wrote down, I remember reading a book about self-esteem years ago, and the authors, I'm sorry, I forget their name, too many years ago, but I remember something they did say. It really set well with me. They said, it's important to have for self-esteem and self-confidence, we have to have two things. We have to have a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging. A sense of purpose, meaning, I think, like a vision, dreams, hopes, things that we want to do in our life, and have people along with us who can help foster some of those possibilities. And a sense of belonging, meaning community, to connect with people, not to isolate in our home, to get out there. And that's been one
Not
of the...
to isolate.
Yeah, but that's been
We've
one of the...
kind of been stuck with that a little bit
Well,
this year,
but
haven't
you know,
we?
one of the beauties of the many stories out there, I have a client, for example, who has not come in because of COVID. However, because she's concerned about a family member who has comorbidity, and so she just want to go out and expose herself to the possibility of bringing something home. But at the same time, she is going out, she says, and bringing food, buying food and bringing food to neighbors, going to other people's home and helping them out with cleaning and all those. And she said, kindness. She keeps saying every time we talk on the phone, she says, kindness, I hope, is what helps deliver us through this pandemic and helps us realize that we're all here together.
Yeah, you know, really, when you think of it, anytime you're nice to people, even if it's just to greet them, to say hello, it feels good.
You know,
For some reason, it feels good to be nice to other people.
Yeah, and along with that, there was an experiment we used to talk about in school, and I've done it myself numerous times. And they said, if you walk into a store or walk down the street and have a smile on your face, people generally are going to smile back.
Yeah, they do.
And it sounds kind of, well, of course.
Usually.
But it's not always the case. If you think about that, I think I may have mentioned it last time I talked, but I remember walking into Walmart one time, and there was a man who I didn't really happen to notice sitting outside. Who knows? I was walking in, I had a smile on my face, and just was feeling pretty good. And the guy yells out to me, he says, "Hey!" And I looked, and he was talking to me. He says, "Thank you for having a smile on your face. More people need to smile. Nobody smiles anymore. Everybody's walking around with a frown. They're all walking into the store with a frown." He was loud like that, pardon me. And I thought, oh. He says, "Thanks for smiling." Simple thing like that. But sometimes that smiling is a healing. Kara Seekin probably speaks to that quite a bit. You know, healing. We have to heal people who feel bad about themselves for whatever reason, may come across as bullies. But you know, underneath that, hopefully
there's some reason that they are bullies. There's for some reason they feel that they have to bully other people.
Well, in many ways, I think you know, it's a compensation. It's a compensation. I have to try to act this way to feel good about myself, even if it's at the expense of somebody else's suffering. You know, and that's one of the sad things we see a lot, I think, all too often, is how many people smile and laugh at the expense of other people's suffering. When people are suffering, I think we need to be not judging them in that way, but be concerned and see what they might need if we can be of help. And I think that's what my client was saying, and I'm hearing more of that. People are, the kindness in people is coming out. People are going and helping neighbors, helping friends, and coming out of this and feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, and doing things like I said with yoga and learning to meditate. You've probably heard of somebody named Paramahansa Yogananda.
Yes.
That came to the West from India, like in the early 1900s, I think it was, and he's got all these different. His main book was Autobiography of a Yoga, but he's got these other little ones that he wrote, and like one of them is how to be happy all the time. So you get a copy of it. It's just a thin little book, you know, about thinner than what you've got there, but maybe about a similar height and width. And basically, you get into meditation and things like that. You know, it's not like he's not talking about being happy because you're a millionaire or anything like that. You know, it's basically to go within yourself and just be contented with things the way they are.
Right, and I like that because I take from that when I work with my clients who are depressed and don't want to be depressed. I mean, it's not a matter of me judging that they're not supposed to be depressed. It's okay to be a little depressed, but more to learn from that and to realize that the answer for most all of us is within. We have to. My work is to help people, I think, to be a guide to direct them towards themselves and to find that. It's an exploration. And to find the unknown and perhaps realize that you're better or you're nicer or maybe you can enjoy life. Just like what you did when people who turned you on to yoga or vegetarian cooking, you know, and you tried it out and saw it.
And it led to opportunities,
That's
you know,
right.
It led to opportunities. I eventually inherited the position of, a friend of mine and I inherited the position of being co-coordinators, like for example, for the Vegetarian Vegan Society, and now I'm dedicated to wanting to help other people learn how to take better care of themselves and
That's right.
and so forth.
And that comes from you feeling good about yourself, and that brings that energy is picked up by those people. I want, you know, not only to eat better and healthy, but to get it from you, to learn from you. You're a teacher.
And I've learned a lot from experts that I've had the opportunity to meet. So it's very fulfilling, actually, and that's kind of why I do this television program too. Is I try to get people to come on and have conversations with me about things that I feel are very important, like a good diet to stay healthy and the environment, protecting the environment, and so forth. So I remember one woman told me one time that she likes Fresh Perspectives because she goes, "You're introducing us to things we've never even heard of."
Yeah, so, and that's the beauty, right? And that's the beauty of this. Yeah, we all grow, right? And then we feel better about ourselves. Like, unbeknownst to you, probably how many people out there have learned things from you and others who are on this show, and they've taken off to try it and say, "Oh, this feels good and feels right." Maybe they've turned it on to other people. That's a domino effect in a healthy way.
Well, I hate to say it, but we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I wanted to say thank you again for agreeing to come on again. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I'll see the rest of you on the next episode in a couple of weeks.
Hey.